Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens and this is Carly Stevens Books for all things writing, publishing, and indie author life. Today I wanted to share with you some thoughts on originality. Sometimes people say, oh my goodness, there are so many books that are exactly the same that are out, or I want to write something that is truly, truly original. Now, the reason that this topic came up is it's something that I think about in a lot of different ways quite often, just because these comments will regularly surface. There's a lot of discussion, for example, recently about the boom of romantasy and how it's all the same. We get all these shadow daddies and different tropes that are similar. Now, there is some legitimacy to that. You don't want to read something that sounds and feels like it was just regurgitated or remixed from something that you've read a million times. Nobody wants to read something that is so cliche that it has no life in it. However, it's interesting that people point out fantasy romance for this issue when the same kinds of issues exist in other genres as well, such as thrillers, mysteries, other types of romance, fantasy, and the target is never the thriller books that have a lot of the same tropes and types of scenes and types of writing. It's recently the fantasy romance. Now, that very well could be because the rise of fantasy romance has been absolutely meteoric and people are loving the escapism that it provides. That is my suspicion that that's why people target that. But let's talk about that idea of originality. Now, as writers, we're often put into two categories, two groups. There are the plotters and there are the pantsers, those who write by the seat of their pants. Some people argue that people who pants their stories or discovery write their stories are bound to be more original than people who plot, because we have plot structures that some will argue hamper creativity. We have the beat sheet for romance, we have the beat sheet for novels, and how can you be original in a tight structure like that? I would come back to you and say, how can you be original if you're painting in a frame? Yes, there are edges to that. It's going to be the same rectangular shape. You can be truly original within a framework just as much as you can be original outside it. So I think there's a misconception about originality. To be original, you don't need to come up with something that no one has thought of before in any way. If you do that, then it's probably not going to resonate with audiences, because there is an ebb and flow to story. Just in general. I'm not saying that you need to stick religiously to a particular beat sheet or anything like that, but I am saying that there are certain types of storytelling that are going to be satisfying to an audience, and there are certain types of writing that just are not even going to seem like story. If you want to be truly original, the way you can do that is by using your personality, your original voice, your mixing of different elements and making that into something that is truly unique and one of a kind. So consider this, human beings, right? I am a white female living in Colorado and, XYZ. Lots of people can fit into this category, but they are not me. They do not have my voice. They do not have my personality. They do not have all of my background. And so even though on a Venn diagram we may look kind of similar and overlap, we are individuals and we are original and unique. Story is very much the same. You may have a similar structure. You may have something like romance, adventure, etc. But the voice is going to be different. You're going to bring something new to that story. And so the way to be original, I think, is less about coming up with an original idea as it is being authentically yourself in the midst of writing whatever story it is you're writing. If you want to write another romantasy, then write the romantasy. Write what you want to read, what you want to see, and put your own personal spin on it. sometimes people will point to, well, nobody's original anymore, but maybe in the past they wrote these masterpieces and what have you, such as Hamlet by William Shakespeare. A lot of people don't know that Shakespeare did not invent the story of Hamlet. He took an existing kind of quasi-historical account of an actual person who lived in Denmark, who ruled kind of during the turn of the thousands, I guess. And he made it into something that was relevant to his own day, to his own tastes and personality. He put in his own love of puns. He made it into something that is so fundamentally and beautifully complex and human, and reflected who Shakespeare was as a person, not just that story that he essentially based this on. So fast forward several hundred years, and I wrote a Hamlet retelling from another character's point of view that has a lot of myself in it. And although there is a lot of overlap between the scenes in this story and the scenes in Hamlet, we're another step removed, and I put in things that I like that dark academia, 1920s Paris aesthetic. Some of the deep thoughts that Laertes has are thoughts that I've had as well. The characters are characters that I personally love. And so this is something that tends to sell pretty well, because all I need to say is what is my own personal spin on this. It's a dark academia Hamlet retelling set in 1920s Paris. Now, all of those individual elements have been done before. There are lots of Hamlet retellings out there. There are lots of books set in 1920s Paris, lots of dark academia, but it's this particular alchemy of my own preferences and my own loves and voice and all of this that make this book special and original. This is the only Laertes retelling that I've ever managed to find. So even books like Illumini, the first book in the Illumini files by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, it seems like it's completely original because you have this incredibly unusual style of found footage and these artifacts of the voyage through space to tell the story. Found footage as a vehicle for telling a story is not unique to this book. It's unusual, but it's not unique to this book. The other elements in this, there's some Battlestar Galactica elements. It is sci-fi, so you have space. There is a sort of zombie element to it. There's a countdown, there's AI, all of these things, again, that appear in a lot of other different kinds of stories, and plot beats that are typical of a certain variety of story. All of those things individually are not unique, are not original. However, it is once again, the alchemy of this particular remix of all of these things, given humanity through these two authors, that make this an original work. So if you're worried about being original, if you're worried that the market is saturated with thrillers, with romantasy, with whatever it might be, put yourself into your work, and that is going to be enough to give it that originality that you crave. You can even add more of that originality or your unique voice and personality into your work in subsequent revisions. You can find those things that feel a bit too cliche, like you just said it because other people said it. Find a new way to describe that emotion, or a new turn that the plot can take instead of what is the very first thing that comes to mind because you've seen that over and over again. People go back to the same types of stories for a reason. There is comfort in a certain amount of predictability. Not that your story should be predictable, add those twists, do the thing. But there should be a happily ever after at the end of romances. There should be magic in fantasy. There should be these different things because that's what people love. It's those elements plus characters that they get to know, that they connect with, and a plot that keeps them guessing, that really keep people coming back to these different genres. So don't worry about not being original. Just make sure that you are letting your humanity shine through, and you'll do just fine. All right, those are my thoughts on originality in writing. If you haven't already, I have a new release that just came out, Power to Charm. It's cozy stories about a witchy cottage and unexpected friends, that dropped on April 26, 2025. So if you have not gotten your copy, definitely check that out. Check out my website as well for more resources for writers. You can do it. I believe in you. Subscribe if you haven't already for more stuff like this, and I'll see you next time. Bye.